What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We're talking about the skeleton and synovial joints. Let's get it popping. So, with the skeleton, it's basically a framework of the human body there. And with the skeleton, typically we have two different regions of the skeleton. We have the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is composed of three different parts. We've got the skull, we've got the vertebral column, otherwise known as the spine there. And this spine is split up in several different parts. We got the cervical vertebrae in the neck, thoracic vertebrae in the upper back, lumbar vertebrae in the lower back, and then between our two hip bones, we got the sacrum, followed by the coccyx. Basically, it's a small vestigial tail there at the very bottom of your spine there. And axial skeleton includes the rib cage and the sternum there. An example from a car's perspective is we kind of think of the axial skeleton as the axle on a car. The appendicular skeleton is the rest of the bones of the human body, almost. Typically, they involve the extremities, your arms, legs, hands, and feet. They also include the shoulder girdle, which is the clavicle and the scapula, otherwise known as the collarbone and your shoulder blade. The pelvis as well there, your two hip bones there, the ilium, ischium, and pubis, three different bones that are fused together to make up your hip bones. Now there are 6 bones of the ear that are not included in the appendicular skeleton, but they do count towards the total number of bones in the human body there. From a car perspective there, the appendicular skeleton is kind of like the wheels on a car. So if we go back here, the axial skeleton is the axle, and the appendicular skeleton is the wheels. So basically the axial skeleton is kind of the structure that the appendicular skeleton moves around. So basically, the axial skeleton or axis is typically made to be more not rigid in a sense, but it's not supposed to move around a whole lot. Versus the appendicular skeleton, the wheels, tend to move around a lot more. So basically your vertebrae there in spine, while it can bend, it's not made to bend. It's supposed to typically kind of be a support system there for your arms and legs to move around. Now, what are some of the mechanical functions of the skeleton? Number one there is it provides a framework or a structure for the muscles to pull on to allow for movement. Without bones, muscles could stretch and contract, but they wouldn't be pulling on anything, therefore not creating any movement. So we need bones there to allow our muscles to pull on to create movement. Bones allow for weight bearing for support there. So again, it provides a structure, a support there for our bodies to be able to move. It is also a place to support the soft tissues and organs of the body. So basically our organs can hang on these different muscles or on these different bones there. In addition, bones provide protection to our vital organs, especially if you think about the sternum there and the rib cage there. It protects a lot of the organs there in our upper body. Protects the heart, protects the lungs, protects the liver, things along those lines there. In addition, the skull, for example, will protect the brain from getting injured. Now, not only are there mechanical functions of the skeleton, there are also physiological functions. Number one is the main site for storage of essential minerals, such as calcium and phosphorus. In addition, inside some of the bones, we've got 2 different types of marrow. We've got red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. Red bone marrow produces blood cells, specifically RBCs or red blood cells, platelets, and white blood cells, including lymphocytes. So the production of white blood cells, that makes bone marrow there an important part of the immune system. Likewise, yellow bone marrow is used, mainly to store fat for energy production there. Also, yellow bone marrow is involved in development of bone, cartilage, muscle, and fat. So what we'll talk about in the next several slides here are the different types of bone classifications. Okay, and these bone classifications are based on a variety of different things. Okay, if you look at here, there's several different bones, and they each kind of had unique shapes there. Now, with these bones, there's various amounts, densities, distribution of materials there, and affects the mechanical properties of those particular bones there. And we'll talk about these several in the next several slides. One of these bone classifications are long bones. Okay? Long bones, these are typically bones that you might find in your legs, in your arms, in your fingers. Okay? Typically, these bones are going to be long and hollow, okay, with knobby ends there. These are designed for large movement there. And oftentimes, as I mentioned before, they happen in the arms and the legs, okay, your extremities. Short bones, these are small and solid, and their main purpose there is designed to transfer forces or provide some sort of shock absorption. You can see this in the carpal bones of your hands and the tarsal bones of your ankle. Your carpal bones are essentially your wrist bones, and your tarsal bones are your ankle bones. Flat bones, okay, things along lines of your hips, your ribs, your sternum, your skull there, they are typically flatter surfaces, okay, and they're mainly designed for protection. Irregular bones are your cervical vertebrae, for example, and their main purpose is to provide support, protection, and leverage there in your body. And then we've got sesamoid bones. Okay? Sesamoid bones are developed within tendons. The most common one we can think about there is your kneecap, otherwise known as your patella there. Okay? And their purpose is to decrease stress, okay, and or increase leverage there. Now, since exercise deals with a lot of movement there, we're going to focus quite a bit on long bone anatomy here in this PowerPoint set. With our long bone anatomy, okay, we kind of got two different regions. We've got our ends, okay, top and the bottom there, and then we got our shaft or body in the middle. Okay. The ends, their main purpose there is they're going to be these sites of articulation with other bones. Now, articulation is just a fancy word for two bones touching. So essentially, where two bones touch, okay, that's considered an articulating surface there. And because these ends articulate or connect with bones, if it was just bone connecting with a bone, that would become very rough there, and that would become very uncomfortable. If you see in older adults there, as with age there, typically arthritis comes in, okay, and that's due to a wearing down of the hyaline or articular cartilage that coats the end of our long bones. So as this cartilage wears down there, okay, and goes away there, and we get bone on bone contact, that becomes very painful. Now, also with the ends of these long bones here, they on the inside there, okay, we've got cortical, or no, sorry, I apologize there. The outside of the ends there are cortical, otherwise known as compact. Cortical, letter C, compact, okay, bone there. So the walls there, okay, you'll notice there, they are solid at the ends. However, on the inside, we've got spongy or cancellous bone interior there. So see, notice how it's spongy on the inside. The nice thing about the spongy part there is that it's less dense than solid bone, therefore means the bone weighs less. In the middle here, we've got the shaft or the body. The shaft there of the long bones is covered by the periosteum. And similar to the ends there, we've got compact walls. Now the interior, though, instead of being spongy, it is actually hollow. Okay? And this is where the bone marrow sits there. Again, a reminder that bone marrow produces blood cells, fat, cartilage, and bone. So we mentioned a little bit in the other slide there that one of the benefits of having a inside there that was spongy is that it weighs less, and therefore the bone will weigh less, making it easier to move. Similar to in the middle on the shaft there, with that middle shaft there being hollow on the inside, okay, it also reduces weight. Okay, so that's again one benefit of having spongy or hollow center is that it makes the bones weigh less, making it easier to move. Also, okay, assuming we have two different bones, they both have the same amount of mass or same amount of material there. Okay, if one is hollow and the other is solid there, okay, the one that's going to be hollow is going to typically be stiffer, okay, against bending forces compared to one that is solid. Okay, so for example here, okay, if you take a look at this picture here, if you had a smaller bone, okay, which was, let's say, the white area here, okay, and compare that to a larger bone, so the larger bone would be this one in gray there, but we would assume this inside is hollow and assume that the masses were the same. Because the hollow bone is wider in diameter, okay, assuming it has the same amount of mass there, it would be more resistant to bending forces, meaning it would be less likely to fracture or break. Now, of course, you have to understand that there's a practical limitation of it. If we were to make the bone wider, wider, wider with the same amount of mass, the walls would become thinner and thinner and thinner. At a certain point, yes, it would become more brittle. Okay, but in general, there, if you got two different bones with the same amount of mass, the bone that is hollow will typically be stronger and less likely to fracture there than the bone that is solid. Now, aside from spongy bone there, okay, or bones that are hollow, we do have compact bones as well. Okay, and these compact bones are run by the Haversian system. Okay, if you see that term osteon, you know it's referring to the Haversian system there. Okay? And essentially, what this compact bone is made up of is you've got blood vessels there that are surrounded by layers of bones. Okay, which contain cells called osteocytes. Okay, that's where that term osteon comes from. And what's nice about this is that there's limited layers, okay, in this bone here compared to the blood vessels, so that the bone cells are never too far from the blood supply source. Okay? So, for example, here, okay, all these blood vessels here, okay, they are wrapped up in the bones there. Okay, we've got osteons and osteocytes here, and again, because those blood vessels have a few layers of bones near each blood vessel there, that means the bones can get adequate and nutritious blood supply, okay, needed for repair and for healing and for growth. So going back to spongy bone there, okay. So if you notice here on the inside, it's there's kind of a mesh work-like structure on the inside. As I mentioned before, it reduces the amount of mass in the ends there, typically of longer bones. Now, more calcium is stored in compact bones. Okay? That's important there, but it's more easily released from spongy bone. Okay, meaning the calcium in the spongy bone, okay, more it's easier to be released, the calcium is, okay, compared to that solid bone. So how do long bones grow over time there? Okay, so how does this happen there? Okay, this happens by a process, number one, of endochondral ossification. Okay, essentially endochondral ossification just means cartilage is replaced by bone. Okay, and this begins prior to birth, okay, where initially, okay, growing in the womb there, us as humans there were made up of mainly of cartilage. But as we get closer to coming out of the womb there, more bones become to develop there. Okay, and typically at birth, all but the ends of our bones have ossified. Okay, and the vast majority of the ends of these bones will ossify soon after birth there. Okay, this leaves only a band of cartilage separating the shafts from the ends there. Okay, so essentially we got the shaft of the long bone and we got the ends of the long bone, and in between the shaft and the two ends there, we've got a basically a ring of cartilage there. Okay, and we consider this band of cartilage there the epiphyseal plate, otherwise known as the growth plate. Okay, If you want to look at more fancy terms, okay, the shaft of the bone is considered the diaphysis, okay, and the ends of the bone are considered the epiphysis, okay. So essentially the growth plate there splits the shaft of the bone from the ends of the bone. And here's a picture of that there. You got the shaft, you got the two ends of the bone, okay, and we've got a band of cartilage at each end there. Okay. And as we grow in childhood through puberty there, okay, basically as long as the rate of growth of the bone of the ends of the bone compared to the shaft of the bone, as long as those are equal there, okay, bone growth will continue to develop there. Okay, so essentially, as the diaphysis or the shaft there continues to grow longer and longer and longer, okay, as long as the ends of the bone continue to grow longer and longer and longer, this will maintain this epiphyseal cartilage there, or the growth plate, and will continue to get longer. Okay. However, okay, due to several different factors there, maybe it's excessive mechanical stress, such as getting into a car accident. Okay. Maybe there's a low growth hormone, okay, or there's a rise in the increase of sex hormones, okay, typically during puberty. What happens is that the diaphysis growth rate increases much, or grows at a rate much faster than the epiphysis there, the ends of the bone. And this closes up the growth plate, okay, meaning that the long bone cannot grow anymore. So the length of long bones, okay, those will typically stop, okay, due to these three different factors down here. However, the thickness in bone, how wide it is, okay, this can change across your entire lifespan. So as mentioned previously there, the growth in length there of our long bones will typically stop by a certain age there. Typically during puberty, somewhere in the ages of 14 to 20. The thickness of the bone there, okay, and the density of the spongy bone there can occur at any point in time in life there. Okay. This growth in long bones occurs by the process of appositional growth. Basically, new bone is added to the outside of the existing bone, while old bone is removed from the inside there. And that's typically how the bone grows there. So as you can see by these two graphs here, okay, looking at height, okay, of in centimeters of someone and the age in years, okay, typically this grows here, okay, roughly around the age, again, typically stopping by the age of 20 there. Okay. However, the velocity in height, okay, so essentially how quickly the bones are growing there, this changes very depending on the age you are in life. So you notice when we're really young, we have a lot of growth very quickly. It's one reason why babies get pretty big pretty quickly there. Okay. And then you'll see there's various points in a person's life there, okay, where these growth typically increases pretty quickly. And this mainly happens during puberty there. And we cannot predict when these basically rapid stages of growth are going to happen there. We can only determine retrospectively, meaning looking backwards, okay, at someone's life there, we can see when they had their different growth spurts, okay. But typically, okay, we're going to see some peaks that occur around the ages of 5 to 8 and around the ages of 12 to 15. Okay? And this is important there because as phy-ed teachers here, what's going to be important is that if we're teaching movements to children during these ages where we see rapid growth of their bodies, they're typically going to be more clumsy. So we need to be aware of that there and might want to choose certain activities that are more basic in nature when they are experiencing these rapid growth there so that they can find success in these movements, okay, and are less likely to get injured or maybe fall, make a mistake, something along those lines. So Wolff's law, okay, we're going to refer, or this law applies to all different tissues there in the human body there, okay, and including bone there, okay, because bone is a tissue there, okay, and what Wolff's law states is that a tissue will adapt to the level of stress imposed on it, okay. So if mechanical stress increases, okay, so for example, there, if you've got someone who's kicking, a karate athlete there, the more kicking they do, okay, their bones there, especially their shin bones, are going to become stronger because there's a greater mechanical stress that's occurring on those bones. So mechanical stress increases, tissue gains will get stronger there through hypertrophy. So bone will become more dense and even larger, okay, if you, for example, kick several times there. Okay. Another example of this might be if you are lifting weights there and a muscle's tugging on a bone, okay, all that stress of that muscle tugging on the bone will make that bone larger there, okay, and stronger. On the flip side, if mechanical stress decreases, tissue is going to lose strength through atrophy. Atrophy meaning getting more brittle, okay, or getting smaller. And we see this in older individuals who are bedridden. Okay? So people who are not very active, okay, and might be restricted to a bed due to an injury, okay, or some sort of other condition there. Okay, what happens is that their bones become more brittle because the muscles are not tugging on that bone as often because they're not exercising as much. Okay, this is not good because if someone would fall, they're at a greater risk of fracturing or breaking a bone because their bones are more brittle. Weight-bearing activities, okay, increases the density and thickness of bones and articular cartilage there. Okay? It's one reason why weightlifters have higher bone densities and runners have higher bone densities compared to other athletes there who might not bear as much weight there, okay, compared to other athletes there. For example, swimmers swim in the water a lot. Okay, they're not on their feet as much. Okay, the water supports their body weight, so there's less mechanical stress on their bones compared to a runner or to a weightlifter there. So with training, we kind of want to have the optimal amount of training there because we want to induce enough mechanical stress there so that our bones and muscles and tendons, ligaments develop, okay, and get stronger there. But we don't want too much stress there where we run the risk of overtraining and our tissues run the risk of breaking more or getting injured, okay? So too much training there, too much stress there, okay, that's not good for the tissues of the body. Not enough stress, okay, it's also not good. Okay, so we want to find that happy medium there. Okay, so essentially this U-shaped response to training, we want to find the optimal amount of training, which is this red area. Okay. To prevent too much stress there, we need to allow for time of recovery between our exercise bouts there, okay, in order for the bones there to recover from all the mechanical stress, for the muscles and the tendons and ligaments to do the same thing. So rest allows the body to recover, make our bones stronger, make our muscles stronger, make our tendons and ligaments more injury resilient. So we've been talking about bones a lot here in this PowerPoint set, okay? And where two bones come together, we call that a joint, okay? And the joint is important. Joints are important because allows the body to move there. So the bones provide a framework there, and the joints allow the bones to move, okay, which helps assist with movement there. So joints specifically there, okay, they control movement, okay, in a particular way, depending on what kind of joint we're looking at. Okay. Joints are also important because they transfer the forces between bones. Okay. So for example, every time I walk there, okay, I push into the ground, and as I push into the ground there, okay, the bones in my feet, okay, all have joints in between them, okay, transfer the forces from my toes to my ankles to my knees to my hips, okay, propelling my body forward there. Now, there's three general big classifications of joints, okay? They go from not movable to very movable, okay? First one is fibrous, okay? These are typically rigid joints, meaning no movement there, connected by fibrous connective tissue. So between the bones in your skull there, okay, we've got skull sutures, okay? So when you were a little baby there, the bones in your skull there, okay, there was cartilage in between those bones there. But as you got older there, they ossified, becoming strong and solid. So that allows your skull there to protect your brain. Because those joints become very strong there and won't come apart, okay, those are considered fibrous joints. Cartilaginous joints there, okay, they are quite rigid as well, but they do allow for some slight movement in between them, okay, and they're connected by cartilaginous tissue, okay. For example, in between the bones there of your spinal column, otherwise known as your vertebrae there, okay, they've got your intervertebral discs and other connective tissue that allow for slight movement at your spine. And then we've got synovial joints. These are very mobile joints, allowing for a lot of movement. Okay? And the important thing about synovial joints is that they are connected by this joint cavity. Okay? And inside this enclosed joint cavity there, okay, it secretes this synovial fluid, this lubricating fluid there that allows the joints to move a lot more freely. So fibrous joints don't move at all. Cartilaginous, a little bit. Synovial joints move a lot. So we typically in general have 6 general classifications of synovial joints. And the 6 classifications of synovial joints typically refers to the type of movement and the type of bones that make up that particular joint. So starting with gliding joints, this one in the top left there, okay, these are typically flat articulations, relatively small in nature. They allow for sliding movements, okay, gliding, which would make sense there, between the bones. For example, your carpal bones, or your bones there of your wrist, those are considered gliding joints. Hinge joints are uniaxial, okay, meaning one axis of rotation. So if you see this hinge joint right here, okay, we've got an axis of rotation that goes horizontal. Think of an axis of rotation there essentially as a kind of like a bar that you would swing around there. We'll talk about these different axes of rotation there a little bit later on in this course. Okay? Because there's one axis of rotation, uni meaning one, okay, there means there's 1 degree of freedom. Okay, basically we're moving, okay, essentially in one plane. Typical joints or movements that happen at hinge joints are flexion and extension. Okay? So for example, at your elbow there, okay, I can bring my elbow together, okay, to create a muscle or a bicep muscle there to flex it, okay. Then I can straighten my elbow to extend it there, okay. So elbow there would be considered a hinge joint, as well as your distal knuckles there on your fingers. Pivot joints, okay, are also uniaxial, okay, meaning 1 degree of freedom of movement as well, okay. Typically, there's going to be a rotation, okay, along a longitudinal axis, okay. And again, we'll talk about axes there a little bit later on here in the course, okay. Examples of these would be your forearms, okay. So I can twist, okay, my forearm there, okay, to bring my palm up and to bring my palm down there, okay. In addition, the atlantoaxial joint, okay, atlantoaxial is the movement, okay, between your top 2 vertebrae there in your spine. This allows your head there to twist a little bit side to side. Then we got 2 different biaxial joints, ellipsoidal and saddle joints there, okay? And essentially these 2 joints, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritties of the difference between these two, but basically they allow for flexion extension, okay, as well as typically abduction and adduction, okay. Abduction, okay, think about it as if I was to be kidnapped by aliens, I would be abducted, okay. This essentially is where movement goes away from the midline of your body, okay, versus adduction, adding into the midline of your body there, okay. That means you bring your arms together. So arms away from your body, abduction, okay. Arms adding to your body, adduction. Okay. The one example of an ellipsoidal joint there would be your wrist. So your wrist, okay, can flex and extend, okay, kind of like shooting a basketball there, okay, and it can also go side to side. An example of a saddle joint in the human body would be the base of your thumb there. And then 6 is the most freely movable joint, okay, ball and socket. This is triaxial, meaning there are 3 degrees of freedom of movement, okay, allowing for flexion and extension, AB and adduction, as well as rotation. Big ball and socket joints would be the shoulder and the hip. So again, with those 6 different joint classifications, they are all synovial joints, okay? And so because they're all synovial joints, they all share this similar structure here that you see on the right. Okay? And with that there, we've got 3 different main parts of the synovial joint structure. Okay? First, we've got the articular capsule. Okay? So if you notice here, articular capsule, okay, left and the right there, but it encompasses the entire joint there. Essentially, it's a sleeve of ligamentous tissue, okay, that helps connect a joint together and keep it together on that. Then we've got articular cartilage. As I mentioned previously, articular means where 2 bones connect or come together. Okay? So this articular cartilage covers the 2 ends of our bones there, allowing for smooth movement between the joints there. Number 2 is it improves the fit of the 2 bones, helping prevent dislocation and reduce pressure there. And they provide some sort of shock absorption as well. And then thirdly, okay, as you can see very much on the inside there, okay, of our articular capsule, we've got our synovial membrane. And this is what secretes that synovial fluid, helping keep these joints lubricated, allowing them to move a lot more freely. As well as this synovial membrane there will provide some shock absorption. So looking at long bones here, we've been talking about points of articulation, where you've got that hyaline cartilage there, okay, and then on the inside there, you've got that spongy bone, okay. This again helps with transferring forces there, okay, and absorbing the shock there, okay. And then it's basically this hard outside part and the spongy inside part, it kind of acts similarly to a wheel there on a bike. So the hard part, okay, the compact bone there, okay, that provides structure. It's kind of like the rim of the wheel there, provides structure and support there, okay, versus the spongy bone, kind of like the spokes there on the bike, or spokes there, yeah, on the bike's wheel, okay. This allows the spike or the bike's wheel there to flex a little bit, especially if you land from a high jump, okay. It provides stiffness and structure there, okay, helps cushion, provide some shock absorption as well there, okay. So that's another reason why it's valuable to have that hard outer layer followed by a more spongy interior layer. Synovial joint stability, okay. What is joint stability, okay? Thinking stability meaning stable. Essentially, what joint stability is preventing the joint from moving in a way that it was not designed to move there, okay? Including preventing the bones from moving away from each other or from being dislocated. Okay? And one way that joints typically do this is the 2 parts of the bones that articulate with each other, one end will typically, in general, be concave, okay, or kind of like circles in, and one will be convex there, okay, or will bow out, okay. So essentially we got like the letter C, and inside that C there, we've got a ball, okay. The ball would be the convex part, and the C there would be more of a concave part, okay. And essentially, the tighter the fit of those joints there, the more stable they're going to be. So the greater the concavity, okay, and the more that the convex part bows out there, the better the fit those 2 bones will have. In addition, as we mentioned previously, that the articular cartilage there, okay, and the fibrocartilage discs, okay, like menisci there, okay, increase that fit and stability. So the cartilage there helps improve the fit better. So the better the fit is, the less likely that joint is going to dislocate. In addition there, okay, the pressure within a sealed joint capsule, okay, in the synovial joint, because it's sealed, it's enclosed, is less than the surrounding pressure there on that joint, this will create a suction part between the two bones, again helping keep them together and prevent them from becoming dislocated. Along with the stability of synovial joints, there needs to be a degree of flexibility as well. Okay? And the synovial joint flexibility is limited by the surrounding muscles, ligaments, bones, and joint friction there. Okay? So with muscles there, we've got two different kinds of muscle that we want to look at and compare to the joints there. Okay? We've got biarticulate and monoarticulate. Bi meaning two, mono meaning one. Okay? Biarticulate muscles cross two joints. Okay? These muscles here experience passive insufficiency, okay? Meaning they cannot fully extend at both ends at the same time. For example here, your hamstring muscles are considered biarticulate. For example, okay, if you were to stand up and try to touch your toes, okay, you'd probably reach a certain point where you were not able to you would try to reach down as far as possible, okay, and there would be a limit as to how far down you can reach and touch. Okay? Now, if you're trying to touch your toes with your knees straight there, now try to touch your toes with your knees bent. Okay, so as you bend your knees, it becomes easier to touch your toes there. Okay, and that's because by bending your knees, you shorten the hamstring muscle a little bit, allowing the muscle to bend more. Okay, at the hips there. Okay, allowing you to touch your toes a lot easier there. Okay? So biarticulate muscles there, okay, they can touch, or there's passive insufficiency that can occur. So by bending more at one joint, okay, might allow for movement at another joint. Monoarticulate muscles that only cross one joint there, in general do not limit your flexibility. Okay? However, okay, if a muscle is too big there, okay, you might not be able to bend that joint as much. So for example, a bodybuilder with big biceps there, okay, when they create that big bicep muscle pose, try to touch their shoulders, they might not be able to because their bicep muscles and forearm muscles are too big and they run into each other. In addition there, antagonistic muscles create tension in the opposite of the direction of movement. For example, your bicep muscles and your tricep muscles, okay, are opposite of one another. Okay? If I'm making that big muscle bicep pose, okay, bring my elbow together there, okay, as my bicep muscle is working, my tricep muscle, okay, has to relax to allow my bicep muscle to be made. Okay? However, it will eventually tighten at the end range, okay, of that muscle as that joint comes together, because I don't want to dislocate my elbow there. So the antagonistic muscle there creates tension opposite of the direction of movement there, helping prevent that joint from moving to a greater degree of flexibility. Ligaments. So a lot of times with ligaments, we got a ligament on one side and a ligament on the other. For example, in your knee there, we've got a medial collateral ligament and we have a lateral ligament. The medial collateral ligament there, your MCL, is on the inside of your knee, more towards the midline, and your LCL, or your lateral collateral ligament, is on the outside of your knee. Okay? And typically, if my knee were to try to bend, okay, instead of it normally, if it would try to bend left or right there, which is not made to do, okay, your ligament, one of those ligaments there would become very tight, and one of them would become very loose. And the one becomes tight there prevents that joint there from moving in a way that it's not meant to move. Bones, okay, can prevent or can limit the amount of synovial joint flexibility, okay, if two bones would basically come into contact together. For example, if you were to perform a squat there and you would change how wide your feet are apart, a lot of times you might actually not be able to squat down as far if you move your feet out farther versus in, or maybe vice versa. And this depends on the shape of your hips and how your femurs sit in those particular hip bones. Okay? At some of those positions there, your hip bone might run to your femur bone, and that might prevent you from squatting down as far. And then finally, excessive wear of anything in the joint capsule increases friction. Okay? So for example, people who have gotten older there and they've basically damaged their hyaline cartilage, okay? That would prevent the joints from moving as well because it'd be painful, therefore limiting flexibility. Our main fitness goal here, okay, with our students, with ourselves, okay, if we decide to coach any athletes there, okay, our biggest fitness goal is to avoid injury. Okay? Exercise, training, whatnot, should not be the thing that injures you. Let me repeat that there. The things you do that make you healthy, like exercise there, should not be the thing that injures you. Okay? In order to do that there is that we need to make sure that our workout program makes sense. It's one reason why it's important to know the anatomy and physiology and the structure and functions of the human body so we can create exercise programs that help us get stronger, faster, more explosive, okay, more injury resilient there. Secondly, we need to make sure that existing issues, otherwise known as injuries there, okay, are addressed prior to addressing load. So if we're not moving as well, okay, maybe we're not as flexible. Let's, for example, here, if I'm a gymnast here and I want to be able to do the splits, okay, if I'm not flexible enough to do the splits there, okay, I should probably not jump into the air and land in the splits position because that would set myself up for injury. Okay, so I would need to address my flexibility first before I would try to work on jumping up and landing in the split position. One thing to help us to avoid injury is that we need to understand that the body is a kinetic chain, okay? Meaning that things that affect one part of the body may affect the other. Okay? And we can look at this kind of by the joint by joint approach. And essentially looking in the human body there, okay, as we move throughout the body, one joint and its adjacent joints are going to basically change on what their main purpose is, whether it's supposed to be more mobile or versus they're supposed to be more stable. Okay. For example, starting down the ankles there, okay, ankles are supposed to be mobile joints. They should be able to move quite a bit, okay. So you notice there, your ankles there can move in 360 degrees when healthy. Your knees are typically more stable joints. Yes, I know they can extend and flex a lot there, but they can't make big circles there like my ankles can. Therefore, my knees are going to typically be more stable versus my ankles more mobile. Moving up the chain there, the next joint, your hips there. Okay, hips can move in a 360 degrees. They're going to be typically more mobile. Okay? Your lumbar joints are going to be typically, your lower back there, typically going to be more stable. Thoracic is going to be your upper back there, okay, typically more mobile. Scapula, your shoulder blades are going to be stable. Glenohumeral, otherwise known as your shoulder joint there, typically more mobile. Elbows more stable, wrists more mobile. So basically, we should train our joints the way that they were intended to work. Okay, so this, if a joint's supposed to be more mobile, in general, we want to train something for more mobility. It's supposed to be more stable. We want to train it for more stability there. Now, it's not always that simple there. For example, okay, your hips and your shoulder joints both need to be mobile there, okay, but we need some sort of stability as well. Okay, therefore, we do not want a hip dislocation or a shoulder dislocation. Another example there, your scapula, your shoulder blades, are stable joints, okay, yet it does need a fair amount of mobility in order to protect the shoulder and move it through a big range of motion. If we have an injury or movement dysfunction at one joint, it will typically show up as pain there at the joint above or below. So for example here, okay, if I'm experiencing knee pain, okay, could it be an injury to the knee? Absolutely. Okay, but oftentimes if my knee is painful, it's because it's taking up a ton of stress due to improper movement there of your ankle or your hip joint. Okay? So a lot of times, when, in terms of the athletes that I work with there, okay, if an athlete has sprained an ankle, they are more likely to develop knee pain because their ankle's not able to bend as much as it used to be able to do. Yeah. It's one reason why should we proactively brace your ankles? So someone with healthy ankles, should we actually put them in an ankle brace? Maybe, maybe not. Because if my ankle joint moves less there, that means more force is now at the knee there, which put my knees at greater risk of getting injured there. So therefore, it's important there as physical education teachers, okay, or as coaches there, is we need to treat the source of the dysfunction rather than the location of the symptoms. Going back to my knee pain example, okay, if I have an ankle that doesn't move very well, causing my knee to become painful, I should work on getting my ankle more flexible, okay, instead of just icing and trying to rehab my knee a ton there. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a good day. Booyah!